Welcome, great souls, to our first satsang for this beautiful, beautiful study of the book, The New Path, by Swami
Great
Kriyananda.
souls to our first satsang
With Swami Kriyananda. Sorry about that. So this is a wonderful book, and we had a beautiful time yesterday evening connecting with Ashanaya Swami, who helped Swami Kriyananda write the book, in the sense that she copied up his notes, and it was a handwritten book at the time in the 70s, and she had to rewrite it and rewrite it and rewrite it. So she's very well versed in this incredible spiritual Bible that this book is. And it's so pertinent during these times. We're going through an incredible shift, an incredible change. And I think people that even are very strongly on the spiritual path have been tested. And it is a time where there's an incredible amount of grace coming in. So we can dive very deeply spiritually during this time in meditation, on our path, even though there's a great deal of challenges, and indeed that we can stumble. And this book really is a guide and a raft down the torrent of the river that is flowing through life at this stage, the whitewater rapids of divisiveness and challenge at this time. So this is a wonderful time to go into this study. And rather than it be just a book study, we're going to, at times, meditate on certain aspects of the teachings that's being shared with us, on some of the thoughts and the experiences that Swami Kriyananda shares. The book is, as you can see, it's quite a thick book. We're going to go at just a regular pace. I am setting no pace and no guidelines of how long this is going to take. We're not starting at the beginning. The beginning chapters, part one, are really talking about the young Swami Kriyananda, Donald J. Waters, and his life and how he came to the path. And we're going to begin at chapter 15, which is a map discovered. We're going to listen to that chapter today. And what I wanted to say, just before I carry on, is, the way that these classes are designed, you can literally just come to the class, watch the recording, whether you're watching live or the recording, and you can just listen to the chapter, so you don't have to do any reading beforehand. You can sit and meditate while that audio is going on, or you can, in fact, or just if you're in your car in the morning or whatever it is, and you can take and draw inspiration, and we'll discuss it, and you need to do no further. But each week we will know where we will be picking up for the following week. So I do encourage you, if you have the time and you really do want to make a deeper study of it, that you do read beforehand. And actually, it's wonderful to reread the chapter or listen to the audio again. I'll be playing the audio through Audible through this Zoom meeting. So there's various ways that you can tune into the book. Crystal Clarity Publishers sells it, but any good bookstore, Amazon, etc., has this book. And then also, you may want to have a notebook with you, even a journal where you can take notes, because this really is a map for people. I'm just reading on the back. We're going to read inside, but just on the back, Michael Toms, the founder of New Dimensions Media, says, required reading for every spiritual seeker. So whether you're on this path, as I know many of you will be watching this, but maybe you're new to the spiritual path, or you don't know about guru-disciple relationship. And so, or, you're just exploring. You've heard about Paramhansa Yogananda or Swami Kriyananda, This is a wonderfully rich book. It shows you how to live spiritually and how to traverse the spiritual path and all the different facets of it. I think in the beginning, when we come to the spiritual path, we feel that it's going to be deep meditations and sunny skies and the birds and the wildlife sitting on your shoulders, and as you meditate in the forest, it's anything but that. Even though we do have moments not quite like that, would be nice, but something we do have very deep and inspiring and joyful moments. So it's a very practical book. And so you may want to have a journal and make some notes. You may want to have the book by you, even though we're not going to necessarily need to read it, but you might be listening along and you might want to underline or highlight certain parts of the chapter. You may even, and something that I have done is I just write kind of from different books, I write out particular points that really strike me, and I put them by my meditation chair. And I'm always looking for quotes when I want to meditate, and I can never remember where is that quote, which book is that in. So I decided to write them down, and it's a wonderful way if you want to meditate on that. And really, we are going to go deeply into this book. If you wish to, you can dive very deeply into it. So you may want to meditate. We're going to meditate together at certain points. I'm not going to, maybe we do a class and we don't meditate at all. We'll see how that goes. This is the first time I've led a book study, and it's the first time I'm leading a book study where we take time to meditate on the practice. But I feel deeply within that this is what Swami Kriyananda is asking of us and Master, of me anyway. So these things, if you can do, not necessarily right now, but maybe for the next time. And let's start with a prayer to set the energy. If you're new to this particular path, we're calling in all of the main characters from this book, all of the avatars, the masters, who have passed from this earth, including Swami Kriyananda, but are with us in their very vibrant and alive consciousness. So just a brief prayer. So just opening the heart and mind, focused at the point between the eyebrows, feeling Paramhansa Yogananda, Swami Kriyananda, sitting with us, maybe merging their consciousness with our consciousness, guiding us. And let's pray. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, great masters of Kriya Yoga and self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Moshaya, Swami Sri Yukteswar, our beloved Paramhansa Yogananda, and our friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda. Inwardly, we humbly bow at thy feet. Bless this deep and joyful study of the spiritual life. Show us inwardly and deeply, on every level, what it is to be a true spiritual seeker, what it is to be a disciple, what it is to live the spiritual life in everyday moments and all areas of our lives. Uplift us. Om, peace. Amen. Okay. And then, because I'm live streaming onto YouTube, I will say I'm just going to see about putting on the phone comments to be able to see the comments on the YouTube. There is a little bit of a lag, but I do encourage you, if you have any points to make, any questions, if it doesn't work this way, in broadcasting in this way, maybe I'll open up the Zoom account in the future. We'll see exactly what to do. As I say, this is all new to me. But at the moment, we'll try it. If you have any points to make, anything that comes to mind, it will be nice for it to be interactive. And was there anything else? Yeah, let's just feel that Yogananda, whether you know him or not, Swami Kriyananda, his direct disciple, whether you know him or not, is guiding us to this point to help us to feel what's appropriate for us during this study to help us. So without further ado.
Chapter 14, Joy. Chapter 15, A Map Discovered. As soon as possible after my return to White Plains, I went to Bowling Green in New York City to apply for a merchant mariner's card. I received the card on August 24th with the classification Ordinary Seaman, Messman, Wiper. I was told it was now only a question of waiting for a ship that would give me a berth. I hoped to ship out as soon as possible. Meanwhile, I helped Mother to pack. On her sailing date, I accompanied her to the dock in New York and saw her safely off on her journey. Next, I went down to Bowling Green to see if any ship had come in. No luck. Come back in a few days. With most of the afternoon still before me, I went uptown to browse at Brentano's, a famous bookstore on Fifth Avenue. At Brentano's, I got into a discussion on spiritual matters with a sales clerk, who showed me a few books by Thomas Merton, the young Protestant Christian who had converted to Roman Catholicism and had then become a Trappist monk. I was intrigued, though I didn't feel personally attracted. It was the Catholicity, which is to say, the universality of India's teachings, that had won my devotion. From Brentano's, I went further up Fifth Avenue to another bookstore, Doubleday Durand, as it was named then. Here I found an entire section of books on Indian philosophy, the first I had ever encountered. Hungrily I feasted my gaze on the wide variety of titles, the Upanishads, the Bhagavad Gita, the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, books on yoga. I finished scanning these shelves, then stood up to go over them again. This time, to my surprise, the first book I saw, standing face outward on the shelf, was one I hadn't noticed at first. The author's photograph on the cover affected me strangely. Never had I seen any face radiate back to me so much goodness, humility, and love. Eagerly I picked up the book and glanced again at its title, Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhansa Yogananda. The author I saw lived in America, in California. Was this someone at last who could help me in my search? As I leafed through the first pages of the book, the first words to catch my attention were dedicated to the memory of Luther Burbank, an American saint. An American saint? But how preposterous! How could anyone become a saint in this land of the almighty dollar, this materialistic desert? I closed the book in dismay and returned it to its place on the shelf. That day I bought my first book of Indian philosophy, not Autobiography of a Yogi, but Sir Edwin Arnold's beautiful translation of the Bhagavad Gita. Eagerly I took this treasure home with me to Scarsdale, where I had temporarily rented a private room. For the next couple of days I fairly devoured what I read, feeling myself to be soaring through vast skies of wisdom. By this sign is the sage known, being of equal grace to comrades, friends, chance comers, strangers, lovers, enemies, aliens and kinsmen, loving all alike, evil or good. What wonderful words! Thrilled I read on. Yea, knowing me the source of all, By me all creatures wrought. The wise in spirit cleave to me, into my being brought. And unto these thus serving well, thus loving ceaselessly, I give a mind of perfect mood, whereby they draw to me. And, all for love of them, within their darkened souls I dwell, and with bright rays of wisdom's lamp their ignorance dispel. These marvelous teachings were dispelling all my doubts. I knew now with complete certainty that this was the right path for me. The day after I finished my first reading of the Bhagavad Gita, I returned to New York, intending to visit Bowling Green and see if any ship had come in. I was walking down 7th Avenue toward the subway, the entrance to which was on the far side of the next cross street, when I recalled the book I'd rejected so summarily on my last visit to the city, Autobiography of a Yogi. As I remembered that beautiful face on the cover, I felt a strong inner prompting to go by it. I thrust the thought firmly out of my mind. That isn't what I'm looking for, I told myself. Chuckling, I added, an American saint indeed. Resolutely, I continued to walk toward the subway. The thought returned, how can you know what the book is really like if you won't even read it? No, I repeated. I then offered reasons. I've got to stop reading books. I'm too intellectual as it is. Besides, if I'm ever to become a hermit, I'm going to have to save money, not continue to spend it. I reached the corner and was proceeding toward the curb ahead of me when I felt that an actual force was turning me left toward 5th Avenue. I'd never experienced anything like this before. Amazed, I asked myself, is there something in this book that I'm meant to read? Unresisting now, I hastened forward, eager to reach Doubleday Duran. On entering the store, I made straight for the shelves of Indian books and bought Autobiography of a Yogi. As I turned to leave, I bumped into Doug Birch, that friend from Scarsdale High School who had introduced me to Nix and to Dixieland Jazz. We exchanged news briefly. Doug began to describe in glowing terms his plans for a career in radio and advertising. The more he talked, the more closely I hugged to my heart this increasingly precious acquisition. Imperceptibly, my doubts about it had vanished. I felt as though Yogananda shared my dismay at the shining prospects Doug was describing, a way of life that to me spelled desolation. My new book in hand, I felt suddenly as though this Indian yogi and I were old friends. The world and I were strangers, but here was one human being, the very first, who knew and understood me, and I hadn't yet even met him physically.
Well, thank you for bearing with me with that. Welcome to 2021 and the age of technology. I hope you meditated, but I know it can be very frustrating when these technical difficulties happen. So I appreciate you staying on board. Hopefully we can edit it out for the recording. We haven't quite finished the chapter there. I thought it would be a wonderful time to stop. If anyone has any comments that come to mind, please write in the chat box. Now there is that 20 to 30 second delay, so forgive me if it is a little bit slow in me responding to you. You don't have to write, but it would be a wonderful way if anything comes to mind. I made some points just as I've read the chapter, but also made some points as I was listening in. And so you might want to do that. But one of the things is just that jumped out at me. I mean, really, for all of us, is just this is a wonderful time to tune back into coming to the spiritual path. What is it like? Where were we mentally and emotionally? What was our life like? what was it that brought us to the path? I mean, we've missed much of the introduction that really gets you to talk about the Swami as he's growing up as J. Donald Walters, and then this intense yearning for truth. And we will go back to this particular moment, but when he has a walkout in the evening and starts to think about God and that God must be consciousness. But this intense yearning and this intense feeling of despair at the world and very much looking for answers. So reading this book, if we take it in deeply, it's a wonderful time, as I just said, just to deeply tune into what was I going through at that time. So I'm going to pause and we'll just take a moment to come to that. Where were you at that time when you were seeking, and just tune into that. So let's just take a moment or two. I don't think this is what Swami meant for us to meditate on, but I just thought it would be interesting for us to bring ourselves into the book and just take a moment. What were you feeling? What were you needing? Maybe it was a chance encounter with someone. And just whether you want to take that away for the week. But just, for myself, it was really just, I was very unhappy in life, even though outwardly it seemed like it was going normal compared to everyone. In fact, it felt very much like that last line that Swami was sharing, that, here is Master, and I underlined this anyway and thought it was wonderful. The world and I were strangers. So, but here was one human being, the very first, who knew and understood me. And I hadn't yet even met him physically. And of course, Yogananda said for his autobiography of a yogi that he put his vibrations in the autobiography of a yogi. And we can really feel that. I can feel that in the new path, that Swami's put that in there. And so Swami could feel the vibration of Yogananda, and he felt understood. And how many of us on the spiritual path have had those feelings of, no one understands me, I don't fit in, you're in your family and everyone has, just like that person Doug in the story, they're very committed to material and worldly success, success in the world, not the spiritual world. And so we sometimes just feel separate and apart. And this is a powerful theme to understand, that as spiritual seekers, we've come to this point because we are searching deeply. The other points just to really notice is that, and I'm doing this in no particular order, but that Swami Kriyananda was talking about how he put the book back because Luther Burbank the book was dedicated to Luther Burbank, who was an American saint, and how preposterous this was. And yet here we are, all these decades later, here we are 70 decades later, even 70 from when Master was here. And so that was when Swamiji was picking up this book, and over 70 years now. And just how much spirituality, even though we're in this incredibly divisive and uncertain climate and culture right now, but at the same time, I'm losing my thread there for a moment. yeah, at the same time, there is a great spiritual depth to this country. I mean, so we can tune into that. As I said at the very beginning of this talk, we can start to tune into that. And so a very different world from when Swami was awakening in some ways. In some ways, it's got more intensely materialistic and challenging, but there's also the richness of spirituality just coming to this particular path. You know, as Usher was saying last night, you know, there was no other books and talk, deep study, sharing of someone's life with Swami, with Paramhansa Yogananda, as until he wrote The New Path. And there was a couple of books, but he was really the first one, or the second one, but the first one that deeply did it as a bhakti study. And so we come to this path now, and there's just an abundance of books. Swami wrote over 140 books. So it's incredible to just look at the change, even though we could say the madness has got more intense. The spirituality, the ability to tune in has got much more deeply available to each of us. And then the other point that I really kind of picked up on yesterday was just the intellectual, the comment that Swami Kriyananda made. He said, maybe I'm a little bit, you know, I'm already too intellectual. And this is something that he worked on for those beginning years while he was with Master, and he'll share about this in this book. But just to say that what's so interesting is he's about to give his life as he knows it up completely. And he says in it, we're about to get it. He says, I didn't want to be impulsive. I didn't want to be impulsive because so I waited. So he finishes the book, and then he's deciding, I'm going to go to Los Angeles. I don't want to be impulsive, but he leaves the very next day. So he didn't want to leave straight away. Well, for most of us, leaving the next day after reading a book is totally impulsive. It's so radical. It's a complete shift. And it really speaks to, even though here is Swami Kriyananda, or J. Donald Walters at that time, who was very intellectually, you know, that was his focus, too intellectual by his own words. And yet on this path, he led from the heart and made this incredible decision to follow Yogananda, that this was the person that he knew that could bring him the peace and the joy that he sought. So he could find that within himself and live it, but he could also show other people. It was a totally radical, but from the heart. He shares in a moment that he really felt there was some sort of grace that came in during this period. And of course, the guru-disciple relationship, as we know already, is not just in this lifetime. This is over many, many lifetimes. And so he's reawakening, he's tuning into that relationship that is eternal, that is beyond this physical body. And so a huge grace, but just very, very interesting that he said, I'm intellectual, and yet he does the most heartfelt and intuitive next step to walk on the path. And so for ourselves, just tuning into that, where we were, what decisions we made, what things we came up against, family members, work colleagues, society, what we had to come up against and make those decisions. And for us, it surely wasn't as quickly as Yogananda, as Swami Kriyananda did, to go down to LA, to Los Angeles from New York, all the way across the country. but we still had to make those steps, whether it was a week, 3 weeks, whether we haven't made those steps, whether it was a year, maybe it was decades, who knows. But we too were being touched by the Guru, and it was the perfect time, however long it took for us to tune into. Well, I see no comments. I guess no one is saying anything. I hope the sound is coming through. You are all still with me. So let's continue on. We haven't got long left. So let's see if we finish. In fact, we should be finishing now. What should we do? Maybe there's where we'll finish for the day. And so this has been an introduction. I'll close out. I'll finish up 5 minutes later. As you can see, it goes by quickly, especially when you have technical difficulties. But for next week, we're going to finish the rest of this chapter. This week, if you feel to, really tuning into that period of time. And especially where I wanted to get to was that incredible enthusiasm that we have for the spiritual path when we first came to it. If we've been on the path for a period of time, sometimes we lose that enthusiasm, or it transforms into something else. And so, you know, I've definitely had that in my life where that kind of fire has burnt out. And in fact, for me, it's been through deep testing that I found that fire has come back, but in a different way as well. There's a depth there that I couldn't have had at that time. But take this time to really tune into the enthusiasm, feelings that you were having as you came to the path, as you came to, whether it was this path, whether it was coming to spirituality more generally before coming to the new, to Ananda or Yogananda. Take that time to tune into that, and then to reflect in meditation this week, reflecting upon, do I need to stoke the fires of that enthusiasm? And I think reading this book together, listening to it, meditating on it, I knew we wouldn't meditate much within this first chapter. What was going to be next week's chapter, and let's see how we transform with this. But in the next chapter, the Pilgrim Meets His Guide, chapter 16, we will see Yogananda and Swami Kriyananda over the next chapter or two coming together, and that profound moment. And that's something we will meditate very deeply on for quite a few minutes. And I'll guide you through a meditation and a practice to tune into that. So again, apologies for the technical difficulties. I really appreciate, thank you, Victoria, for coming to my door. I was just picking up my phone at that time to look at the chat. I was having a great time in the vibration. It's a lesson learned for me. I won't be doing that again. I'll have my phone right by me. So have a wonderful week. And if you can, get your journal, get your notepads, really start to, if you feel to, dive deeply in it, because this is a spiritual gem. Many blessings. God bless. Take care.